Cans it up, the Penguins were changing. If they're able to come out relatively easy, it's Keith Primo with the first. Primo cuts the inside, scores! There it is! Keith Primo! The much maligned center of the Philadelphia Flyers wins this game in the fifth overtime.
A month ago,
Yep.
I was a podcasting idiot. Knew nothing about podcasting. Didn't think thought it was a waste of time. And now, believe it or not, TFP actually has a suite of podcasts.
Yeah.
Right? This show, if you missed any of the show or last week's show, not that you want to tune into last week, even though it was brilliant, we're now podcasting the Hot Stove Powered by the Fourth Period on every major platform, Apple, Spotify. You already know, fans, my friends in Los Angeles, Kings of the Podcast, me and John Hoven, the best LA podcast, hockey podcast there is.
And let me preface it by saying that you're absolutely right. It is, and this isn't just tooting his own horn or anything like that. Yeah, you and the mayor, John Hoven, definitely kicking some LA podcast butt out there. It's a great freaking show.
Yep. And a third podcast, the O&B Puckcast. The official TFP Philadelphia podcast.
That's right.
Is now available. So tune into the guys in Philly. Do a great job. Very passionate fans. So don't forget, this show's been podcasted, Kings of the Podcast and the O&B Puckcast.
And that's right, yeah. TheFourthPeriod.com. Thanks, DB and Dave Pagnotta, for that little feature we had on the Hot Stove show this past weekend. And you can get the Hot Stove, Kings of Podcast, and, of course, the O&B Puckcast on your favorite podcast platforms. I'm your host, Isaiah, and we're here for episode number 58. Chef B, how are you, man?
Very good. I can't believe we hit 58 already, but it's been fun, so I'm looking forward to doing more.
Yeah, someday I'll catch up to my age. And, of course, from Brotherly Pod and Brotherly Puck, National Pod and Puck, Dan, a Flyer fan. How you doing, man?
I'm doing good. It's hockey season finally, and I'm excited to be back.
Fantastic. Yeah, the Flyers are back. How you like that? And boy, what a difference between the exhibition games and real hockey. Boy, what could be a better example of that was the Flyers' first game after that Lausanne disaster. And, before we get into that, I just want to have some breaking news. The Flyers have been able to clear the cap space of Andy Walensky. I think he was making $700,000, and he was placed on waivers because he was cleared to play, and that means, Dan, what is the next step? Is it Joel Farabee or Phil Myers coming up, or maybe somebody else on the horizon?
Well, I don't know exactly who it's going to be. I can probably guess it won't be Myers, simply because they already have 7 defensemen on the roster. Nobody's hurt yet. Maybe Farabee. Could be somebody like Rubtsov as well. I guess it really depends on who they feel like replacing. I mean, if Bunneman is the odd man out right now, if it's Pitlick, then it's probably a fourth liner. And I don't think anybody would take too kindly to Joel Farabee being on the fourth line already. So I don't know what their plan is or who exactly they're going to call up, but I would not be surprised if we see another forward up here in the next couple days.
Yeah, and Chef, I'm thinking the Flyers are just going to sign Chris Stewart. That's what I really think is going to happen. He'll be the 13th forward. He might play against teams where they think they anticipate some physical play being an issue, where he is somewhat of a pushback that the Flyers may not currently have without Sam Moran out there or what have you.
Yeah, I mean, I look at it like this. Everything I've read so far that I've delved into has indicated that why would you bring up Farabee if he's not? I think even Vigneault said it. He doesn't want him to be buried on the last line He doesn't, his view has been apparently that lines 2 and 3 kind of like are almost the same anymore in this style of league in this, lately. So why would you waste bringing Farabee up and just to bury him on the fourth line? I think the more common sense thing is that what you said, they signed Stewie. He comes in on games where they need a little bit of snarl or muscle, and for league minimum $700,000, that's what you get. I mean, that's a role that they might need to play down the line. But either way, it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, I don't think he's really added much. I don't know if he's really an NHL player right now, but I'm not going to get crazy. And let me apologize up front, folks. I don't want to bury the lead. In just about 20, 25 minutes, we're going to have Riley Cote on, former Flyer. He's going to talk about where the team is at now and how the role of the enforcer turned power forward and everything has evolved. And he's also going to talk about some new approaches to some of the lifestyle problems that athletes have during and after their careers. So with regards to pain and some other things. So that really is a segment we're pretty psyched about. And I also wanted to wish a happy Canadian Thanksgiving to our followers and listeners in the Great White North. So, gents, without any further ado, after the disaster that was the Lausanne loss, Dan, that is an exhibition game that actually mattered. There's so many players that reference the embarrassment as kind of like that last kick in the butt that they needed, and they came out and against a pretty fast Chicago Blackhawk team, albeit one that I don't think has a victory just yet, but they play with a certain pace that the Flyers aren't used to, and it was an exciting game that the Flyers were able to close out and get the victory.
Yeah, they started strong. It was like you said, a 180 from the Lausanne game where they were not playing very well. They kind of came out slow out of the gate. I think they underestimated who they were facing. And that was their last preseason game. So maybe they said, hey, it's time to stop doing this now. And they started playing much better. They came out strong against the Blackhawks. There were a couple defensive breakdowns throughout the game. But, other than that, they played one of the better games of hockey that we've seen out of them, at that point. That was before the Jersey game, obviously. But at that point, that was one of the better games we've seen in quite some time. So it was good to see that right out of the gate, especially after their trip to Europe.
Yeah, absolutely. And the Flyers took control in the second period. But, Chicago got a power play goal, kind of stayed with it. But by that point, the Flyers really had definitely established themselves as the better team, at least on that day. And, Chef, one thing we noticed right out of the gate was having Kevin Hayes and Sean Couturier as 1-2 down the middle. Such a difference. It's been really a chasm-sized hole that the Flyers have not been able to fill. And against Chicago, you're just knowing if one guy was out there, the Flyers defensively were going to have the structure we haven't seen in a long time.
Wow, what a difference, isn't it? In the preseason before the Lausanne game, I think the penalty kill was 13 out of 14. I think they gave up whatever in the Lausanne game. I don't even want to think about that one anymore. And I think they've killed 6 out of 7 so far this season. So the best thing about this is, and I think, as much as everybody complained that we overpaid for Hayes, when we get to game 15 or 20 and we're in the top 3, possibly in penalty killing from where we were in the bottom 3 at the end of the season, I think that $700,000 that everybody was complaining about per year will pretty much settle the difference of what they're thinking about.
You mean an extra that he got paid?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That everybody says he got. I feel like Kevin Hayes is going to be a player that he's going to end up being a Flyer that being a effing Flyer like Vigneault said, but he's going to be one a very fan favorite very quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. And Dan, the one guy on the ice that you couldn't help but notice the most after Carter Hart, it was Travis Konechny. He got 2 goals, definitely the most dynamic player on the ice that particular night, and really for most of the season.
Yeah, I mean, 3 goals and 3 assists through 3 games already. I mean, if there's one person you really want to kind of break out into a legitimate star in the team, it is Travis Konechny. You know, he's kind of been on the verge of breaking out his career high of 24 goals and 49 points. I mean, he's already on pace to just completely shatter that. So it's looking good. You know, if he can develop into the sniper and the all-around tough kind of edgy player that they need, that's a huge win, and especially since they just signed him to a relatively nice contract. So this will be it's a good to see Travis going to be breaking out this year.
Yeah, maybe he'll be a 30-goal guy like some have predicted. You know, one thing on the Behind the Glass, the third installment, which I thought was mostly uneventful, but it was
boring a little bit.
Yeah, the one good line from AV, and you can always count on him for at least one. He said, I think something like, being down 4-0 is not part of our job description. So I thought that was a good one. Mm-hmm. But, well, you know, move on to game 2, the real home opener. After all that travel, you know, coming from Prague. And the Flyers open up. Unlike the 8-2 drubbing they got last year at the hands of the San Jose Sharks, they beat the Devils 4-0. It's the first shutout by Carter Hart. And, Chef, I mean, that, if you recall, I think everybody knows, it's like the save of the year, and it might be, even after, like, the playoffs, the save of the year. Second period, penalty kill save. He has to go all the way across the other side of the ice to rob, Taylor Hall. And it elicited one of the loudest responses in the Wells Fargo Center, like, since, I don't know, the La Violette days.
Oh, my God. I'll tell you something. I watched that game, and I wanted him to get that shutout so bad. I don't know. Maybe it's just me. But if I'm sitting on the edge of my seat going, yelling and screaming and going, wow, I can't believe that save. And I think everybody in there finally went, all right, he's the real deal. We do have a goalie now. So I think that save was pretty much an exclamation point upon everything that we thought we had last year going into this year. And I will say this. I will quote a very intelligent man. The Flyers are fun to watch again. I haven't had this much fun watching them in possibly 10 years. I do believe that was Dan the Flyer fan. I'm paraphrasing it, but I know that's how I felt, and he was exactly right. You hit the mark on that.
Dan?
I mean, that was the single greatest Flyers game probably since the 2012 playoffs with the Penguins. Yeah. And the regular season before that was probably the last game of the 2009-2010 season when they beat the Rangers in the shootout to make the playoffs. Like those are the only 2 times I can think of in recent memory where the energy within the Wells Fargo Center was palpable through the television, and you could feel it. It was great. That was such a refreshing game, and you know, to have it so early in the season, it is good. It shows that, you know, they're committed early, getting the fans back on board, and I'm certainly interested in watching this team play every night again.
Yeah, I mean, it's really something, the transformation, and it's obviously they're a better coach team, and within that game, you could see they were getting closer and closer to the high-quality scoring areas. That was one thing they weren't doing a little bit earlier in the game, but then Hayes and Couturier both convert. And you know, one thing, I was listening to Bundy and Bill Meltzer, and I have to agree, you know, it's a Flyers forecheck, even including the neutral zone, forcing turnovers, more cycling of the puck versus, you know, low to high in the offensive zone, which is like the death knell for offense. Yeah. And they have, you know, more pace in their game, and that's led to a lot of things. Their PK is using a lot of strong side pressure, they're challenging entries, and, you know, it's a big deal. And they're getting off to better starts. You know, they were minus 31 in first periods last year. You know, and I remember, you know, Dan, just recalling the discussion by Hextall about donating the first 10 minutes, you know, right before Hextall gets canned, like about 3 weeks or so, he said something like that. And that's obviously a big emphasis with Alain Vigneault.
I love Le'Veon. I've been talking about it on my show, Brotherly Pod, for the past couple of weeks. Just, I love what he brings to the table. He's a no-nonsense kind of guy. He's been very straightforward, both, with the press and with the team, and as we've seen on the Behind the Glass episode. So I really like what I've seen of Le'Veon. He's bringing a no-nonsense kind of attitude. He's really kicked this team in the butt to get him going, and it's obviously paying dividends early. He seems to have a lot of the team behind him, which I don't think Dave Haxtell or Ron Hextall did for a vast majority of their tenure here. So he's off to a great start, and it is really good to see.
Yeah. All in all, it was a great night. It was a lot of fun. If there was only one minor downer, it was seeing Wayne Simmons, Chef, in a Devils uniform, and he was mildly bitter about how things turned out. But he's not a negative guy per se. It's just not in Simmer's character. But that was like the one mild downer on what otherwise was a banner night.
Yeah, I mean, you love Simmer, and it was if one thing you seen him in that yellow and the black or yellow last year at the end of the season, and then seeing him in the black and red now. If you thought the yellow was weird, that red was just like, oh my gosh, and rightfully so. I think I tweeted out last week when we came in, and I said, look, he'll get the standing ovation, applause. And every time after that, you should boo him when he touches the puck, just like that. And I think he even said in an interview, I'd be disappointed if they didn't boo me. So I think he knows it's a sport, but also it's a business too, and that's just the way it goes. So it was nice seeing him, but I'm still going to boo him from now on until he gets an orange back on him.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's your right. No truth to the rumor that the only person who actually used the new Rage Room for the Flyers was Wayne Simmons himself. But we'll have to keep tabs on that. Gents, moving along. So the Flyers just this past Saturday night go all the way out to Vancouver. It's the most absolutely ridiculous travel schedule that has ever been foisted upon an NHL team, in my humble opinion. So the Flyers, got off to a rough start, a little overwhelmed by, I think, the travel and the speed of Vancouver. They have some high skilled people. But again, the Flyers came on, took control of that game, but lost in a shootout versus the Canucks. And Dan, wondering if you had the opportunity to catch that, because I know you were doing some scouting as part of your Phantom duties.
Yeah, I was able to catch that game, and they came out kind of slow, which I'm just going to chalk up to the travel. I think it was 13,000 miles or whatever it is at that point. So, I really don't know what to make of them coming out slow. I think they're going to be fine. They came out slow. By the end of the game, they were able to fight back, and they were looking strong. Vancouver has a lot of talent, especially at forward, a lot of young talent. So I'm not too concerned about that game overall. I think they looked fine. Carter Hart was fine within the game as well. So I think it's just a minor hiccup due to the travel, but I think they'll get back on here now that they have some time to settle with Calgary and Edmonton this week.
Yeah, and the Flyers hit their share of posts. I remember that one shot, Chef by Sanheim, rung off the post. He's done that a lot of times. He has a very tricky release that goalies have a tough time tracking, and he could have won the game right there. It's a shame that he didn't get the puck luck.
There's a lot of heat on the top line. You're hearing during already that, it's X amount of $1 million between, Jake Giroux and Hayes, and they haven't produced really a lot of goals, but or any points, in fact. But you got to understand too. I mean, Hayes has contributed in other areas, but I look at it too. I think I do believe G hit the post once. Didn't Hayes hit the post twice during that game? I have it.
I remember once, I think. Yeah.
Yeah,
I think he fanned on one.
Yeah.
Oh, all right. Okay, that's what I'm thinking of. Me. Yeah, I seen the highlights. I DVR'd the game. I haven't watched all of it yet, but yeah, it could be this this the whole overexcitement thing. I mean, this team is different. Like Dan said, it's wired up, and I think everything that they're doing is sort of working. and I don't think this team's used to it yet, and I think they're a little too excited.
Yeah, I mean, it could be. I mean, Flyers are 2-0-1. I mean, it's just so early to draw conclusions. But if you go by metrics and things like that, the Flyers are doing very well, the first two lines, in terms of expected goals for, Corsi, and all those things. I just think that the data set is just too small right now to draw a lot of conclusions. Claude Giroux doesn't have a goal right now, and neither does JVR, I don't think. No, I'm looking at it right now. So it's basically Travis, Oscar. You got a goal from Ivan Provorov. You got one for Coots, Hayes, Raffle, and Carson Chorinsky. So it's only 3 games. But, Dan, there is something significant that did happen. And Alain Vigneault talked about it. We're talking about the demotion of Jake Voracek to the third line. He talked about how he didn't like Voracek's, quote, uncharacteristic decisions with the puck, which is why he demoted him. He said he liked his practice today. That sounds like there's going to be accountability we haven't seen in these parts for quite some time.
Yeah, I mean, he clearly didn't watch a lot of Jake Voracek. He thinks that's bad decision. That's just stuff we've been seeing for, 5 years now. But yeah, there's some accountability there. And again, we talked about this over summer probably when they first hired, Michel Therrien as well and to handle the forwards. And there's going to be some accountability here. And these guys that have been slacking for years, kind of taking it easy, aren't going to get that treatment anymore. And Jake Voracek was one of those guys that we talked about. And it seems like it's already kind of. He's being forced to work to earn a spot on the roster. So it's great to see.
Yeah. So that'll be something that bears watching because, Jake has a lot of hiccups with the puck, a lot of east-west play, especially his passes, and sometimes the passes to nowhere. It's like he doesn't, he has a brain cramp or what have you. Something else interesting, Chef, I see a lot of zone start information. And it's early, but some of the players that people are complaining about, like Bunnaman, Pitlick, Raffle, Haig, and Ghost not being visible enough offensively, they're 55% defensive zone starts and more, which is so far, which is kind of usually you would think it might be the other way around, but it, over the course of time, at least some of the players. So you got to measure what you're seeing in terms of expected goals and Corsi with some of these guys, through that lens, like Bunnaman, looks like a guy who looks like he could get demoted, but his defensive zone start percentage is like almost 67%. It's tough for a young kid having to play that much more of the ice at such a disadvantage.
Yeah, well, the good thing is, it seems like, and it could be just me. I don't know much about the courses and all that stuff. I'm not into all that as much as I probably should be, or whatever. But my reaction is this. I see the Flyers. I see especially all the people you mentioned are the people that been kind of getting dumped on the Twitterverse lately. You're talking to Hayes, Bunnaman. Bunnaman's taking up a spot. You should have had somebody else. Hey, we should trade him. We should trade him over here or whatever. They've actually been. I mean, Haig made a couple of good plays the other day. He's been defensively not great, but he's been sound. I mean, and everybody's going to complain because they need somebody to complain about. I do believe JVR is the current whipping boy because he hasn't scored a goal yet. So, I mean, that's the one where they're trying to ship out all over the place. And, there's maybe two teams in the whole league, maybe 3 that have actually cap space for them. So, I go old school when it comes to my defense. I look and I like the plus minus. It tells me a decent amount of what I need to know. And I watch the games, and that's how I figure out the rest.
That's okay. Yeah, now I'm not a big plus-minus fan unless it's like Mark Howe plus 85. But if you just go by Corsi relative to teammates and stuff like that, Haig, Raffle, Lawton, Pitlick, Bunnaman, and JVR are really having the worst of it. But listen, it's a small sample. Let's not go crazy. Dan, a guy like Haig is just a security blanket type defenseman for a veteran coach like AV. That's how I look at him, And a lot of fans are going to have to get used to that, I think.
I mean, he's been just fine to start the season. I think fans are scarred because of Dave Haxtell's over-reliance on guys like this. And, you know, we haven't really seen that out of Vigneault yet. And unless things really go belly up here with the defenseman, I don't think you're going to. If Haig is out there in a smaller role, which he has been, he's only seeing about 16 minutes compared to the 21-22 that he saw last year. So, I mean, it's a decline. It's what it is. You're going to have guys like this on your roster. You know, it's not NHL 20. You can't build these super rosters just for fun. You know, you got to deal with what you have. And right now, Haig is the guy, whether we like it or not.
Yeah, no, that's where it's at. There's always injuries on defense, so I got to keep that in mind. So we're going to have Riley joining us directly, but before we do, I just wanted to let people know that coming up tomorrow night, the Flyers play against the Calgary Flames. Then the very next night, on Wednesday night, they play versus the Edmonton Oilers. And according to Sam Carchidi, Elaine Vigneault has decided that Brian Elliott will play versus Calgary, and that the hometown boy, or close to hometown, Carter Hart, will play in the Edmonton game. And then after that, the Flyers come home and play the Dallas Stars. And then the following Monday, the 21st, they play the Vegas Golden Knights. So, that's just an update with that. And when we get back, Dan, we're going to give a little Phantoms report after we speak with Riley. So, do we have Riley Cote on the line?
What's happening?
Hey.
How are you guys?
Great to have you on the O&B Puckcast. Riley, you're on with Dan and Chef with the O&B Puckcast. Of course, I'm Isaiah. Wow, it's great to have you on. You played parts of 4 seasons and had an extensive minor league career. Tell us what you're thinking these days.
Yeah, you know, it's I forget sometimes that I played hockey in my previous life. You know, it's been almost nine years now, and you know, things have certainly changed. But I really do miss that team atmosphere, that environment where all the boys can get together and you know, have some laughs, shoot the shit, and that whole thing. But you know, I'm happy where I'm at, and I'm happy that where I'm going is kind of circling back into the sports world. So it's been an interesting ride for sure.
That's terrific. We're going to get into your venture, bodycheckwellness.com, momentarily. But, you know, as an outsider, someone who not only played but coached, I was just wondering, what is your take on what the Flyers are, what they did over the offseason, and what you've seen so far if you've had an opportunity to watch them?
Yeah, you know what? I wasn't overly sure on what to expect going into this season. You know, mainly because I didn't think they upgraded their team a whole lot. But what I do see is, you know, these young guys stepping their game up. You know, new guys coming in and playing well. And a guy like Carter Hart. I mean, I tell you what, if you have solid goaltending, you know, the teams rally around solid goaltending. So young guy, full of energy, really got his head screwed on straight. So from what I see is just, you know, it's early. You know, I don't want to jump ahead of myself here, but you know, you got young energy. You know, you look at this Travis Konecny. He's obviously ramped up his game first 3 games, and you know, Carter Hart, man, I'll tell you what, this guy is what the Flyers have been waiting for years. So you know, between a few of these young guys and guys that have been cultivated through the minor league system, again, stepping into bigger roles, and hopefully, you know, G and these older guys can lead the troops. I mean, they should be pretty competitive, especially when you got good, solid goaltending. I tell you what, it changes the attitude in the locker room. There's no question. Yeah,
and that's the thing. We were kind of like where you're at. We saw what they added. You know, Kevin Hayes is a good 2-way player, but it's not the sexy ad that we thought it would be. And we thought the Flyers are going to kind of be a bubble team that might need to make a trade to push it to the next level. But a lot of that was dependent on what you're talking about with Carter Hart. And if he's a sensation, well, you know, school's out. I mean, they probably going to be a playoff team.
Yeah, I think so too, and I think only because of him. I think he just gives them that extra juice to be a playoff team. I think without him, you're kind of seeing Flyers teams in the previous years where they're just inconsistent. goalies are in and out, up and down. We don't know who's the starter. That's hard on a team to rally around. I've seen, really, really strong goaltending carry teams. That was my last year was in 2010 when, we had a goaltending, a shuffle there, but nonetheless, Michael Leighton was certainly not an NHL starter that year. We will end up going to the finals. So when goaltending is good and hot, I mean, teams rally around that. But when it's weak and there's holes, a weak goal at a critical time just deflates a team. I'll tell you. I've been there before, coaching and playing. It's not fun. It's just kind of like you just takes the wind out of you. So. But then in turn, you get those big saves, those big critical saves. You see, I was at the game there, game 2, the critical saves, and the energy it just breeds is hard to really quantify. But I tell you what, you got that, going if it's consistent and they stay healthy. Carter Hart stays healthy, and these younger guys stay healthy. I mean, I'd like to think they're a playoff team. Absolutely.
Yeah. And there was the other factor that something they've lacked, and we felt they've lacked, was the kind of structure that Alain Vigneault and his coaching staff seem to have implemented with the team. Of course, like you said, it's early, and we're trying to hold back any undue excitement. But it's kind of strange when you have AV with Michel Therrien and Mike Yeo all on the same staff. You got some egos there. So there's kind of management within the management of the staff itself.
Yeah, I didn't know what to think when they added all those previous head coaches. It is a battle of ego. I've lived it. I've played on that side of the fence, and you talk to some of these coaches, some of these guys on their side of the fence that feel they talk about it as if they invented the game or recreated the hockey game. It's funny sometimes, but if you can check your ego at the door and come in with the right mindset of being a team and laying out your ideas, but being listeners too, I think that's critical, especially in that role. You got to get on the same page, but certainly in the sports world, there's a lot of ego, and I feel like in the coaching side of things is even more ego. Everyone has their best system and has their best ideas in certain situations, and but there's a lot of confrontation too in those coaches' rooms. So I think you just got to work through it. Communication is key, and being honest and open and communicating with your players is probably the most important. Keeping these guys together and a high vibe. You don't let these guys go into a funk as a team or individuals. Finding ways to communicate with your players better and get an understanding of how they're feeling on a daily basis, because to me that goes a long way. There's very few things you can really control as a coach. Yeah, you implement the system and you run the lines, but keeping guys healthy and keeping guys on the same page and communicating with your players on a personal level where you're getting the most out of them, like those are things you can control as a coach, and you got to get the most out of you guys.
Absolutely. One thing, Riley, and you probably a really good person to ask this. There are a lot of fans who are very excited about some of the younger players. We have a player on the cusp like Phil Myers, who didn't really have a very good exhibition season. And then you have another player who impressed but couldn't break through scoring-wise, like Joel Farabee. And the fans are kind of antsy to get these guys up here. And what's from your bird's eye view, what are some of the factors that determine when they can make that move? I mean, besides cap space, because that might have played a role as well.
I think it's one of those things. It's just part of the process. There's no harm in any guy going down to the minor leagues and developing. These guys' egos, get bruised a little bit because they think that they should be there, and maybe they should be there. Maybe they just had an off camp, but when you're at that level, it's all about consistency. And there's so many guys at that level ready to take that leap and take that next job. So, for a guy like Farabee, he's going to be a top 6 guy. He's got to be putting up points regularly and consistently. And if you're not, if you can't play that checking role consistently, then you're going to find someone that does that. So you go to the minors, work on your game. And then there's going to be an injury. Someone's going to be inconsistent. Someone's not going to play well. They're going to struggle. They're going to go through a stretch. And if you're playing at the top of your game and you're having a good attitude, you're going to be that guy called up. So the room for error is so thin there. There's only a 23-man roster. There's probably arguably 2 or 3 guys that could crack that in top 7D. And or the 70 and a 13-man forward roster. So, G back in the day played half of a year in the minor league. So you can't take it as a negative thing. You go down there with a good attitude, you dominate, you score, you get confidence, and then when you come up, you're slotted in the position you should be. You're put in a situation to be successful, and hopefully you take advantage of that opportunity and staying consistent. If you want to stay there, you got to be consistent. Making it there is one thing, getting there, but you have to produce. Otherwise, they're going to find someone that will, and that's just the bottom line in pro sports.
Yeah, it definitely seems that way. The other thing is, I think they want, because inevitably you're going to have down times, or you're going to have ruts that you're going to have to get out of, and they want to see how some of these guys respond. Like you're talking about, what does the rest of your game and your contribution look like when you're not scoring? Are you just going to sulk? Is the rest of your game going to fall apart?
Well, that's it, and I've seen it on both sides of the fence. But if you're not scoring, like you said, you have to bring an element to the team that is noticeable and is consistent. And if you can't check and play against teams' top lines, you can't be reliable on your own end. Those are hard for coaches to sit there and watch in the film the next day after games. So if you're not producing offensively, you have to be playing solid defensive game, eating up some minutes on the penalty kill. If you're not a penalty killer, then, you'd only be playing 5-on-5, third, fourth line minutes, which is limited for a high end guy that's going to score. So, it's just one of those things to get out of funks. I mean, you just got to get back to the drawing board and be consistent. And that's just through hard work and preparation. Maybe go to the rink a little earlier. Maybe you go to bed a little earlier. Maybe you stop thinking about it so much. You know what I mean? And then, these high-end guys, I mean, I was never a high-end skill guy, so I wouldn't know what it's like to score 50. But, I've been around a few of them, and, it's a confidence thing, just like anything else. It's like fighting. It's you lose your confidence. The only way to get it back is through your own daily behaviors and just believing in yourself. Like, no one else is going to do it for you. So to go down with a bad attitude is the worst thing you can do. The coaches see it, the players see it. And the best thing in life is to carry around this good attitude, good energy, and people feed off it, and people see it, and sooner or later, when the time is right, your opportunity will be called, and there's your shot. You just got to, and you got to take advantage of it. But it's not a knock on these guys. Again, it's just the way the sports are, and it all work itself out for these guys.
Yeah, absolutely. It was one thing the other night we had when the Devils came to town. We see a player like Wayne Simmons come into town, and it's tough to see him in another uniform. But it kind of takes me back to where you were at, playing one kind of role and seeing how the league has evolved to where a guy like Simmer is kind of like a power forward, a quasi-enforcer, and the toll that has taken on him, having had all those surgeries the prior season. And it leaves the player in a tough situation, and the league is evolving and going through these changes where the players have to deal with things during the career, after the career. And I guess, that kind of brings us to, your venture, bodycheckwellness.com. By the way, that's bodycheck, CHEK, wellness.com. Riley, tell us about it and who your partners are and why you got started.
Sure. I guess you could say I got started because I've seen the dark side of sports. I've seen between my own personal life and guys I've played with and against, a lot of substance abuse, managing pain, inflammation, sleep in a very unsustainable manner, meaning you can't do it for long periods of time. Eventually your body takes its toll and gives up on you. You see that you see that with a lot of different guys. A lot of these things are dehydrating to the body and the brain. So, from that perspective, when I retired, I was 28 years old. I had another year on my contract. I got into coaching, but I also kind of embarked on this journey of healing and personal growth, spiritual development. But it's really starting with nutrition. And once I started learning about the nutritional profile of the hemp seed, I started to learn about these non-intoxicating cannabinoids like CBD. And this is back in 2011, so way early.
Right.
And there was no business model to be made, so it was mainly education, advocacy. So when 2014 Farm Bill came around, there was an opportunity to, capitalize off hemp-derived CBD products, and we started a product line called Body Check Wellness with of my partners, Scott Parker, former Colorado Avalanche Stanley Cup champ, and Todd Herman's 10 years with the Eagles. Just similar stories with with how pro sports took its toll, and some dark stories that came along with it, and above and beyond pain management and managing inflammation, anxiety, and stress and sleep. Big one for contact sports is protecting the brain, and there's actually neuroprotectant properties on these cannabinoids as these neuroprotectants and antioxidants. So from that perspective, it seems fitting for anybody that's sustained head injury, or anything in that world, or even preventing a long-term issue with TBI from brain injury. So protecting your brain before you have this trauma. So from all those elements, it's the recovery process, and it only was fitting that I would stand behind something that I know is a better way to manage the daily grind of life, let alone the daily grind of being an athlete or an enforcer in this case. But that role no longer exists. But the daily grind of just stressing out your body and taxing your joints and your muscles, and again, we have to perform at a high level. The fans expect us to, the coaches expect us to, and we expect us to, and that's taking care of our physical bodies and our minds. And I didn't do a very good job of that. There was not a whole lot of resources that would that offered these types of tools back in the day. You're kind of on your own. It was old school, a lot of drinking, self-medicating that way. Just go hard, party harder, and it's fine. It's fine in the moment. Look at the Broad Street Bullies. They didn't start training until they won 2 Stanley Cups. They'd go to training camp to get in shape and just go to the bar after practice. And now there's so much emphasis on recovery and mindfulness and yoga, meditation, all these different elements that equate to performance and recovery. And hemp and CBD derived from hemp is one of them. So there's still a learning curve. There's a lot of misinformation. There's a lot of snake oil in the marketplace. So there's it's never ending as far as that goes. But nonetheless, just wanted to provide the common man as well as the athlete a sustainable way to manage the daily grind.
Yeah. No, well, you're talking to someone who's not only a chronic pain patient myself. I was a former pharmaceutical and medical rep. And, people should know, you have cannabinoid receptors located throughout the body and in the brain, and they mediate or control or influence your body processes like appetite, pain sensation, mood, memory, all these things you're talking about. I mean, this is real science, and this is just another avenue people have and another choice before they step into the world of opiates, anti-seizure medications for pain, and so and the other part of this a lot of people don't understand is the THC component and where that fits in and where it doesn't fit in. Maybe you could talk a little bit about that.
Sure. Cannabis and humans have co-evolved since the start of time. It's one of the oldest known resources to man, and there's plenty of literature. And in fact, cannabis was the number one ingredient in all of most medicines for 100 years in the U.S. pharmacopoeia. So there's certainly not a shortage of uses, especially for pain management. But I think THC has been demonized, and I think it's been misused as well. The black market has driven these the grows indoors and the THC levels through the roof, and now you have these medical cannabis programs. There's still a lot of high THC products, but naturally the plant is a little bit more balanced. Less THC, more CBD, so there's more of a just an even keel that comes along with it. So I think prohibition has caused this imbalance in the cannabis plant, but also people misuse it. It is a substance that needs to be respected. It's certainly far superior than alcohol as far as how it how it affects the body and everything. It is medicine, but you can't misuse it where you're sacrificing productivity with the effect that you're looking for through the cannabis plant. So I've learned that dosing is key. You know what I mean? Whether you're talking about hemp derived CBD products, they're grown below 0.3% THC, so virtually no THC. There's no intoxicating effects. Right. And then on the other side of the fence, if you get into the medical cannabis program or the rec program, there has to be some respect taught, and there needs to be more education around, the balance of CBD to THC and these terpene profiles. And we're trying to get the benefits out of these plants without sacrificing productivity, as I mentioned. So it's not like, okay, I got to pick one or the other. I'm going to decide to consume my medicine today, and then I'm going to be belly up on my couch. No, there is a nice ratio that you can find. There's a sweet spot every person can find with a little trial and error. That's okay. I got the relief I need. I got, it's managing this. It's managing this. I'm calm. My nervous system feels good. I can go throughout the day, and I got energy. I got focus and clarity. But most people, they don't understand substance. They don't understand how it affects them. They're not very in tune with their body, so they immediately associate, cannabis with getting really high, and then it's just misused, and therefore there's a negative side effect. It might still be a positive side effect for them, but again, you've lost productivity, you become essentially lazier than you should be, and you're probably not maximizing the medicine. So there needs to be more education around THC. It's a valuable component to the cannabis plant. It's evolved with cannabis forever. It's not to be taken out of the plant. It's just to be, be more balanced in its varieties and respected. We need to respect not just cannabis, but all substance. Because I think we struggle with substances and thinking that we need to have more. When I think more, less is more, and low and slow is generally the protocols. In association with using cannabis.
Right.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
Hey, this is Jeff here. So I have a quick question. With your product and the way the market is anymore, with especially in pro sports, where they're testing for everything. I'm assuming from what you just said that your product will not produce any like flags or get anybody hit like on a no substance ban or whatever.
Well, it's a little bit confusing actually. So I'll just clear up the two drug tests. The two drug tests are, one is street drugs, including THC, and the other one is performance enhancing drugs. The performance enhancing drugs, you get suspended 25 games, no pay. Any street drugs, whether it's THC, cocaine, methamphetamine, it's thrown in the substance abuse program for 30 days, but you still get paid, and it's treated more like a public health issue versus like penalizing the player. So these hemp-derived CBD products, if you have a full spectrum product which contains again below 0.3% THC, it is concentrated in an oil, and if you consume enough of it, you actually can test hot for a drug test. So we can never tell anybody, well, you're definitely not going to fail a drug test, is because it's such a low amounts of THC. Some of these drug tests just want just any trace of THC and you're popped. So we also carry an isolate, which means opposed to the full spectrum, isolate is just a CBD molecule. So it's actually marketed as a THC free product, and those ones you will never test positive for the drug test with those. So it's an inferior product, if you want to compare it to a full spectrum, but it is a solution nonetheless, because they still drug test. In my opinion, they just got to squash the drug test altogether, at least for THC, because it is medicine. If you want your players to not have an opioid addiction or an alcohol addiction, let them use cannabis. You know what I mean? Because that is what athletes are using anyways. You know what I mean? I used it when I was still playing. I got drug tested 4 times a year. I know a ton of guys that are using cannabis-based products in some way, shape, or form. And what I've learned through the drug testing program is that for THC, they're not enforcing it. They're just turning a blind eye, because they would be suspending half the league. Because I know that. I know how many guys consume cannabis, whether it's hemp-derived CBD or medical cannabis-grade products. And these guys aren't stupid. They know what works. They're in tune with their bodies. So there's a reason why they've been gravitating towards these products, even back in the day when I played and way beyond me. People have been using cannabis. So it's just one of those things that you can't penalize guys for trying to help themselves out. I think that's the stigma that still kicks around in cannabis, is that the federal government still says it's a Schedule I drug. It has no medical value. It's highly addictive. When we all know that's not the truth. It's hypocrisy at its finest. When they have a U.S. patent on these cannabinoids as neuroprotectants and antioxidants in the same breath, saying that's a Schedule I drug. So there's a lot of just misinformation and hypocrisy around it. But, the bottom line is people are just trying to find relief. All they want is to feel better and recover better, take the edge off. So, in my opinion, the NHL's got to squash the drug test. All sports. All jobs. Come on. why are we enforcing something so stupid when we don't enforce anything else with Ambiens or opioids or any of these other substances that you can come to work, impaired on. So whatever the case may be, you just got to help your people out and give them the right tools.
Yeah, I think you just got to try to streamline the guidelines. We obviously don't want somebody, smoking, hash and going out, getting by and taking on a day trip or anything. But there's a way to do this that's much better, like you're saying, than what we're doing currently. Because, I'd do anything to get rid of the headaches I have. And I know that the only thing that works for me so far, and I definitely want to try some of your products, is opiates. And I'm not going there because it's not worth it. I can't even function on them,
Yeah. You got to look into the medical cannabis program or, the hemp-derived CBD, just based on the sheer science and, anecdotal stories that are floating around between, military soldiers and treating PTSD and post-concussion syndrome and,
right.
Boxers, fighters. My own personal story. Again, and you lean on the U.S. patent. There's something there, and you look at the array of patients that cannabis can help with, from childhood and adult epilepsy, which is essentially a nervous system and brain issue. Right. Dementia, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's are all brain. Concussions, PTSD, all brain, obviously. So right. There's something there. And we can't ignore it. So it's certainly better than taking Tylenol or whatever else. That stuff filters through your liver and it taxes your liver really, really heavily, and you can't take that stuff for long periods of time. Eventually it's gonna cause a stomach ulcer and whatever else, and you're gonna be on another medication for that. And I look at hemp and cannabis is essentially like a food. We take a multivitamin. There's nutrients, cannabinoids. We have an endocannabinoid system, as you mentioned, and we need to feed it. Our body actually produces endocannabinoids, and there's some studies suggesting that like omega-3 fatty acids convert to cannabinoids in the body. But nonetheless, we got to look at this like food, and instead of being so reactive, or we get so sick or with so much pain now that we have to go to an opioid, we have to go to some sort of highly destructive pharmaceutical drug, which we could have hopefully in a perfect world eliminated or avoided based on being more proactive.
Yeah, absolutely. You're right about Tylenol, especially combined with alcohol. That's like a bomb for your liver. You're just asking for trouble. So
no doubt.
Just a little reminder there. If you take Tylenol, I do. Unfortunately, I take more than I would like to. But so bodycheckwellness.com. Again, check is spelled CHEK. And I'm here now. You got to, I see you have a full array of products. So if I'm in pain and I'm going to your website here, what am I looking for? Is there a consultant? Is there someone I can talk to? Like, how can I get started if I'm going to your website?
Well, obviously taking a look at the products, delivery method's important. What you're comfortable with and what you're comfortable or not comfortable with. Some people like the sublingual tinctures underneath the tongue. Some people don't and like to stick with a pill or a capsule. Ingesting it helps calm inflammation and anxiety throughout the whole body, versus a topical, which would be more acute pain or for rashes or burns or something that's more right there on the skin, a specific spot. For acute pain, I tell people to hit it both ways. If people are just trying to calm the anxiety and manage sleep and that whole bit, you probably just want to ingest it, capsule, right. Tincture. So it all depends. And then, it depends on the individual, how bad their situation is. We have different levels, 1,000 milligram, 500 milligram. So, if you're really in pain, I'd suggest obviously jumping right to the 1,000 milligram. But if you're just taking it for basic wellness and, like multivitamin type of thing, you start with the 500. You can always take more. You know what I mean? And find your sweet spot. But, a lot of times less is more. And it's just kind of a subtle calmness, managing inflammation. We're always fighting inflammation. Our bodies are always combating stress.
Right.
So it's good to always get these cannabinoids into your body. So, and if you do have any questions either, you contact us at the website there or on the email there, and we'll answer any questions you might have. There is a little bit of a trial and error. Everyone's different. Everyone's stomach is different, and the bioavailability is different. Some people are on pharmaceuticals, some people are not. some people have a lot of gut flora, and some people have essentially no gut flora. So that all
right,
it all does
right.
play.
Yeah.
It does all play into the the bioavailability of these products. So I have some people that are very, very sensitive to cannabinoids. 5-10 milligrams, and they're like, whoa, that's I really feel that. And they got other people take 35 to 50 and say, well, I kind of feel good, but I don't really feel anything. I don't know if it's maybe psychological. They're expecting, a caffeine or a high feeling or something. They're just expecting something. I think there's a lot of psychology behind some of these drugs, and people just want to feel. So, again, trial and error. Start low and slow. Find that sweet spot, and then it's it's your individual relationship with medicine and the plant. Everyone's different, so it's hard for us to ever say a full true dosing. We start at 25 milligrams, but maybe that's too much, or maybe that's not enough. So I don't know if that answered your question, but yeah, any questions, feel free to send an email. But I understand a lot of people are very in the dark when it comes to this. You can go to your gas station, you can go to the vape shop, you can go to a health food store, Whole Foods, and all different storefronts clearly, and they're all selling it, but it's not all the same quality. And I think that's the biggest thing you should be looking for in these companies is third-party testing. On our website, we actually have the lab reports for our products on there, very transparent, so you can see that that it tests below 0.3% THC and a few other cannabinoids, as well as any heavy metals, which you will not test positive for. So just giving the consumers some peace of mind. But it's not rocket science. I think between the dosing instructions on the side is a good starting point, and then just working your way up from there, or working your way down depending on the individual.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and that's really key. The bioavailability and what you want, the good stuff, and not too much of the bad stuff. And the heavy metals, that's another big one. A lot of people overlook that. There's some products that have a certain level of efficacy, but you're going to get some heavy metals in your system, and that's not good for brain health, among many other things.
Absolutely. So. The heavy metals sit in the brain, so we're trying to avoid that, and not just from our medicine here, but from our food. Pesticides and herbicides and all these chemicals, contain heavy metals. And you look at some of the ingredients in water. Sodium fluoride is a heavy metal. It shouldn't be in our water.
No.
It sits in our brain and it calcifies the pineal gland. So we're trying to remove that. We're trying to heal. So getting out toxins and getting in the nutrients and the good stuff is what we're trying to do. So it's a cramming effect, cramming the good, cramming with the bad.
Yeah, absolutely. So Riley, it's amazing the evolution of what you were doing and how you were able to handle that transition to bodycheckwellness.com and being an advocate for something that's not just going to help athletes, that could help the everyday Joe. And I think it's fantastic that you're involved with this, and I wish you all the success with it.
Yeah, thanks. It's a lot. And I just want to make it clear, just like you said there, it's not selfishly for athletes. This is for the common man, and we're just using the sports platform to really normalize this. We actually recently partnered up with a nonprofit with the Philadelphia, Pennsylvania labor unions. It's called IWAP, Injured Workers Advocacy Program, to help their crisis that they're dealing with, from workers' comp claims and these workers' comp claims going bad with opioid addiction. So this is about just the working man, the 9-to-5er, the soccer mom, and everyone in between, because this is about the better good of all people.
Yeah, absolutely. And Riley, thanks so much for coming on the O&B Puckcast. We'd love to have you on again, get some updates, and everybody go to bodycheckwellness.com, and that check, bodycheck, CHEK, wellness.com. Riley, thank you so much for coming on.
No problem. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
All right. We'll catch you down the road.
All right. Have a good night, guys.
Right. All right. So, gents, that's really fascinating. A lot of these guys, the NHL, like Riley was talking about, Dan, these guys used to come in to training camp, and that would be how they got in shape. And they come in and they go and drink after the games. And now it's like the league is so much better. The players are so much better, and it's making so many demands on the human body, and that's something that's finite.
Yeah, how he was talking about the Flyers Cup teams back in the 70s, and I'm sure it was probably like the Wild West back then when it comes to the drugs and alcohol and kind of stuff. So obviously we live in a society where that stuff really isn't allowed, especially in sports. So it's a different environment in 2019 than it was 40 years ago.
Yeah, absolutely. I forget the name of the place they used to go all.
The penalty box.
Yeah,
it was the bar. That was the bar in Jersey. It was the penalty box.
There was some other place. There was another place they used to go to as well. But yeah, they had maybe a few haunts, but
I'm sure they didn't stay in one for too long.
yeah. Different games, guys are just everything's all tweaked up today, and it's going to take its toll. So check that out. It's really great to have Riley on. He's you could tell it has a passion for this, and hopefully tonight's show offered an alternative to, if we help one person say, hey, you know what, I'm going to try that before I go and take, whatever. And Chef and I both know what it's like about chronic pain. But look, we want to move on from that before we get rolling. Dan, you were at the Phantoms game on, what was that, Saturday night?
I was there for the home opener on last Saturday, and I was there Friday this week.
Right, and I just wanted to get some reports on the some of the big high-profile players like Morgan Frost, Farabee, Philip Myers, who obviously was really upset that he got sent down, and of course on brotherlypuck.com you have an article by Manny Benavidez, who talks about the Flyers junior hockey report recap, and he does that on a weekly basis. So that's something you want to go to brotherlypuck.com. But getting back to the Flyer prospects that are in Lehigh Valley, what are some of the impressions that you came away with?
Yeah, I really like what I've seen out of a majority of the team thus far. I'm flabbergasted they sent Felix Sandstrom down because Jeff Berube has been a hot mess, and Alex Lyon is about as middle of the road as you can get as a goaltender. So that kind of shocked me. But, game one was kind of rough. That was before Farabee and Myers were sent down. But once they got there on Friday night, I mean, it's clear that those two are head and shoulders above everybody else on the team at the moment. Farabee scored that beautiful highlight reel goal as his first professional goal. I'm sure we've all seen it on Twitter at this point. It was floating around there. It was glorious. Myers as well has just been a noticeable force on the blue line, and they're good. Frost has been fine. He's not doing anything wrong. He's not really doing anything, overly noticeable either. I think his size is kind of hurting him. I know people don't like to hear that anymore, that size isn't important, but I believe he is struggling to maintain that. He was getting bullied on Friday night quite a bit against the Wilkes-Barre Scranton Penguins. So as for that, Radcliffe has looked much better. I remember during the preseason for the Flyers, he looked out of control a little bit physically. He definitely has reined that in and looking good as well. So the big three are fine. Farabee, I don't know how much longer he's going to be down there. We talked about that at the beginning of the show. Now that Werenski's healthy, I don't know if he's going to get called up or not. But I think he can hang in the NHL. He's certainly hanging with the Phantoms. And if he can keep this pace up for the foreseeable future, he will probably be up with the Flyers again sooner rather than later.
Yeah. In Farabee, I think of that old song by George Harrison, way back in the late 80s, it was something, I think it was called, It Was Said on You. Yes. And he's like a single-minded determination to make the Flyers. He's not going to be, discouraged like Riley was talking about. He's got a good attitude. But I'm all for taking time with Farabee, give him 20, 30 games, let him knock it out of the park, Chef, and then, hey, great. The kid's earned it. He didn't quite earn it enough in the preseason. So, I can be patient. The thing, though, is like we were talking earlier in the show, if Chris Stewart is the guy that comes in, the freaking Flyers Twitter is just going to blow up, as they say.
Twitter will be fun. I do believe. I really do believe. Because I'm as a boss, and when people come to you and ask for, hey, I think I deserve a raise or I get moved up to a different position, especially in the kitchen, you start at the bottom and you work your way up. And it's kind of like, no, I don't want to compare it to getting called up to a minor thing, but I always say to them, before you come to me, make sure that I can't say no to you. Check all the boxes. Make sure that. And it sounds like Farabee's doing it, so which is a good positive thing. But I still think that, like Riley just said, it's never going to hurt your development, 15, 20 games down there to fine-tune everything. That's great. We've only seen, 3-4 games. So it's just like you said at the beginning of the show, it's small sampling size. So let's just, wait it out a little bit. Sign, I'm pretty confident they're going to sign Suey. It's a gut feeling. They signed Stewart, and all hell's going to break loose, and Twitter's going to be fun for the next week.
Yeah, well, that would be fun. Yeah, well, and Stewart can work with the new skills coach, Angelo Ricci, who is apparently making a good impact. So it's hard to believe the Flyers didn't have a skills coach. It's good to see the Flyers, along with the analytics and all the other things. I would have thought they would have had a skills coach before they even expanded the analytics. But anyway, that's yet another reason the Flyers are going to be successful. So, with that, I think we have come to an end to yet another episode of the O&B Puckcast. And just a reminder, we can be followed on Twitter at O&B Puck, at O&B Puck. We're on virtually every major platform you could think of. Apple Podcasts, it used to be iTunes, now it's Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and of course SoundCloud. Spotify is a big one. Boy, that Spotify's really taken off. So, if on Apple, if you could give us a 5-star review, we'd really appreciate it. If you take the time to give us a review, especially if you like what we're doing here, we certainly would appreciate that as well. And with that, we're going to get final words here. Dan, Brotherly Pod and Puck, National Pod and Puck, let the people know what you got coming up for your followers.
Well, yeah, you can find me at Dan the Flyer Fan, the site at Brotherly Puck, at Brotherly_Pod, at National Puck, and at NationalPodNet. A couple new articles coming up tomorrow morning on Brotherly Puck, so be sure to check that out. And I'll be back on Thursday night with Brotherly Pod. So,
fantastic. And Chef, you were at Steam Pub, and what other activities are you engaged in these days?
Not much. Working my butt off. It's coming. It's kind of football season. It's hockey season. It's basketball season. So we got plenty of specials over there at Steam Pub. We got something going on every day of the week. So stop by, say hi, grab a good meal and a craft beer, and we'll see you there.
You got it. You got it. And I might say, and I can be followed if you want to bitch at somebody. And Isaiah, ISAIAH _520, Isaiah _520. So again, just a recap, double bill Tuesday and Wednesday, Calgary with Elliott and Nanette tomorrow night. And then we have Carter Hart returns against Edmonton. And before the Flyers return this weekend, Saturday night, at home, Dallas Stars, Monday, the following Monday versus Vegas Golden Knights. And we might be joining you after that, or perhaps the next week after that. That will be determined. And with that, thanks again for listening. Until next time, take care.